Recognize it. The reason that God does not want you or I or anyone to worship idols, here it is. The only things worthy of God is that which He Himself has created. Write that down. The only things worthy of God is that which He has created. And the only thing He has created is me and you. So rather than get wrapped up in stuff, we ought to get wrapped up with each other. Hence, He says they'll know you Christians if you love one another. They won't know you Christians because you bow towards Mecca 10 times a day. They won't know you Christians because you walk the town square 10 times every morning in your prayer walk. They will know you're Christian because your love surpasses anything that could stop you from loving them. Amen. That your love is manifest like that of Jesus, who on the cross said of His accusers and his execution team, Father, forgive them, they're just ignorant. If they really knew what they were doing, they wouldn't do this. That was the power of Christ. You notice He didn't take Himself down off the cross. He didn't prove His divinity by taking Himself out of the situation. He proved His divinity by loving His enemies in the midst of the situation. There's something to be learned in that. Don't confuse love with foolishness. Some people you have to love at a distance. The closer you get to them, the less lovable they become. But you can still love them. Now, you understand the love I'm talking about is agape love, love for their soul. We confuse that too. Nobody's talking about romantic love. We're talking about agape love. One definition in Strong's dictionary is moral love, a care for their soul. I don't want them to suffer harm. That's what Jesus was saying about the Pharisees. He wasn't saying, Father, save my seat next to me in heaven. He was saying, the very acts of what they've done damns them, God. So, Father, please have mercy. That's what He was saying. And we get it confused because we really don't want to dig deep. We like the shallow. We like shallow water. We don't like deep end. We like to just out there in the kiddie pool. Christianity's best enjoyed in the kiddie pool. Just get your toes a little wet and jump out anytime you want to. But when you dive in the deep end, you get it all. You can't help it because there's no bottom. You just got to go. So bear that in mind. Now let's finish up. There's another section to chapter 8 that you need to hear. I got all this stuff. I don't know what it means. Oh well. Verse 9, but beware lest somehow this liberty of yours becomes a stumbling block to those who are weak. For if anyone sees you have knowledge eating in an idol's temple, will not the conscience of him who is weak be emboldened to eat those things offered to idols? And because of your knowledge shall the weak brother perish for whom Christ died. But when you thus sin against the brethren and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never again eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. Now, of course, we're talking about the substance here are things sacrificed to idols. I want to read to you stuff that God poured into my head because it'll help you understand how I react to these things I read. Oh, how I wish that this Spirit would invade the church. How wonderful it would be to be surrounded by people who cared more for their brethren than their own rights, their own desires, or their very lives. And to understand that to sin against the brother is the same as sinning against God, is to understand the nature of Christ, who said the sum total of all that God would tell us, give us, and hope for us was in the two great commandments of loving God and loving each other. See, I think the reason I brought up that thing about Halloween, the churches can get so psychotic over that we can't touch the people who are doing it. Because we push ourselves so far out to the edge that we have no connection with them. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Have you ever seen these churches that just, if somebody even mentions Halloween, all the women shriek and the men run and stand on tables? You know? Well, the people who are doing it don't understand why we're all ready to commit suicide over this. And when you get that dramatically resistant, how do you reach into their lives and help them see the truth? And that's what Paul was saying. Paul says, I can eat anything I want to, and I can not eat anything I want to, but what I want to is not the key. The key is, how do my want-tos affect the people that I need to affect? There are people out there that I need to affect. My Christianity isn't just to please me. God expects me to affect somebody. And how can I affect somebody when I live and disregard them as if they don't matter? That's where the church is making a tremendous mistake. We must come out from them and be separate, but we cannot puff up and behave like we're all that, and they're not worthy of us even saying hello. You can't. How's that going to happen? Thank God He didn't do that to me, because I wasn't worthy. And I have heard that maybe some of you weren't either. I don't know. I could be wrong. But you see, and this is more a Pentecostal problem, because in the other churches, they don't care about anything anyways. I mean, they just go and leave and go and leave. They don't ponder on this stuff. If I know if I was talking to some of my family members right now about this stuff, they'd be looking at me like, well, just read me John 3:16. Don't talk to me about all that. I've actually had some of them say to me, don't talk to me about all that. I don't want to think about all that. I had a guy in church one time, he came up to me after the service and he said, man, you was preaching so good today, I had to start thinking about all the people I once played basketball with, because that's the only way I could not pay attention to what you were saying. And I looked at him and I said, huh? I said, I can't believe you said that to me. I said, that's the most offensive thing I've ever heard anybody say. He said, well, what's the problem with that? I said, what do you think I stand up here for? What do you think I come up here for? Is to say something that will affect you. Well, it affected me all right, Pastor. I could have barely listened to it. But in the Pentecostal church, all the way around, oh, you want to hear me quote Philippians? Because I can quote it better than you can, because I am Pentecostal. Anointed. Filled with the Holy Ghost. Not the Holy Spirit. I ain't saying Spirit, because I feel with the Ghost. Well, it's like humble without an H. It's more humble than humble. And how's that going to get anybody close to God? It never does. And that's what Paul's saying. You cannot win people with that. You've got to be able to reach out to them. I have people say stuff to me all the time, just makes no biblical sense at all. I don't go on some rant. Oh, you misquoted that. Oh, when you get to church, I'm lashing you with 25,000 noodles. No, I just let them talk. What's the point in me trying to embarrass somebody or cut them down or make them seem foolish? They just misquoted. It happens to all of us. No big deal. Their heart knew what they were trying to say. Their heart was in relationship with God. The theme was correct. They just happened to mispronounce a word. Do you know how many people would just... Listen, when we went to Tlaxcala, Mexico, we had this lady that wanted to give the pastor the missionary word. He was a missionary, which means he was 18,000 levels above where she was. This man had given his life to serving people where he had to go learn their language and raise his babies in their country. He knew what God was saying to him about his church. And finally, one day, I had to get in her face and say, shut up. The man didn't bring us here for you to act so foolish. Shut up. Because he told me, he came to me and said, Pastor, you got to get her out of here. She's destroying everything we're trying to accomplish. And she was, with that puffed up spirit. Paul says, don't do that. Don't. However, he says, I don't care what my brother knows or don't know. If I might say or do something to cause him to fail, then the sin is on me, and it's a sin against God. See, I can't sin against you without sinning against God. Can't do it, because you and God just like this. Can't separate you. I sin against you, I have sinned against my Father. Therefore, I say there's a whole lot of sinning going on in the churches. May not be adultery. Might be worse than adultery. Now, to finish about the idols. So Kay and I would go to these little houses, these beautiful little houses, and they would have their Bibles, and there'd be this great old big picture of Jesus. Or there'd be one of these statues of the Virgin Mary. And they'd been in their family like 5 generations. And I'd say, and they'd always say things like, well, Pastor, I've been praying for God to save my husband, but, you know, nothing's happening. Well, you got to get that thing out of your house. That thing's got to go. But Pastor, that belonged to my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I don't care if it belonged to the Apostle Paul. It is poisoning your home. It's got to go. So we were there, and you know, it was funny. Most of the time when I've gone on mission trips, I know what I'm supposed to preach 4 months before I get there. And I'm on the plane headed to Mexico, and I'm saying, God, help me, help me. My Etch-a-Sketch is blank. Help. And I got nothing. And I'm standing up there that night, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And God says, get those idols out of this church. So I said to the people, I preached pretty much along these lines, and I said, tomorrow night I want you to bring your idols. We're going to destroy our idols. You should have seen the looks on their faces. See, down there, they think they got to do what the pastor says. Bada bing. And so, since I said they had to destroy their idols, they believed they had to destroy them. But you could tell, especially the older ladies, they were crushed. They were crushed. So the next night came, and I went and found this great big trash barrel on wheels. You know, you've seen them, those industrial trash cans about, those gray things about this tall and about this wide. And I put it up in front of the church. And I said, okay, who's going to be first? Nobody moved. I said, we're not leaving here to somebody that kills their idol. Staying here all night long. Well, the bus service quit running about 10. So past 10, they couldn't go home anyways. I said, so we staying here. So finally, one little old lady, you know, humped over. You know what I'm talking about. At some point, she was 5'9", now she's 4'3", you know, like that. She comes walking up, and she's clutching this photograph of Christ. She's holding the thing like this. I've seen women not hold her, you know, I've seen women hold her babies like this, you know, just kind of holding it by the head, slinging it. But she's got this thing like this, and she's walking up to that thing, and she's looking, I don't know who she's looking at. I think she's hoping somebody comes and stops her. And she's going like this, and she walks up to the barrel. And I want her to destroy the idol, and she takes that picture and just goes, and just sits it down on the bottom. And I think what she was thinking was, well, if it don't break, maybe I could go back and get it later. So she put it in there, and she turned and walked away, and she was actually crying. And Randy Garvey, the missionary, I'm not sure he was really in tune with me at that moment, because I think he was thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? Then a couple of other folks, I think they just said, well, okay, I can do this. And they started coming. And then when the congregation in mass saw that there were some people who were going to trust the Lord for this, then it became fairly a steady flow. And at first, they would lay those things in that trash can. And then after a while, they would plume. And within a half hour, how many of you know what a picador is in a bullfight? You know what a picador is? Yeah, he's a cruel one. You know, but you know how he has to do it? He runs at that bull. He's on his feet. And that bull is out there, and, you know, they've spent the last half hour going through the bullfight or whatever. And this guy's got to run up to that bull and take his 2 little sticks with barbs on them about this long and shove them up his spine, because that shows the matador where the sword is supposed to go. But I'm telling you, that's the most dangerous part of the whole night. This guy's staring a 2,000-pound bull in the eyeball, and he's running at him like this. Well, that's the way they were running at that trash can. You know, they just come, whoo, and just wham,